All right, welcome back, everyone. It is October 1st, which means September is over, which means recap video is coming at you. Uh, you know, Clearly you can see by the P&L, I would say low. It's definitely a low month for me, 5,500, 5,400. Haven't had this low of a month, and I'm almost a year, maybe a little bit under a year. And I'm grateful for being green, right? I could be losing money, it could be much worse. But I'm quite, I would say, disappointed in myself this month. I wouldn't say too poor of trading, but just the market and how I handled it, and it just really wasn't good. I wasn't happy with my trading at all. And going into this month, I kind of expected it a little bit, and it maybe helped me and hurt me a little bit. Where I, I've been trading for over 4 years now, so over those years, I have kind of picked up a trend that the late summer into fall months are usually slower, and I usually struggle in those months. And so I did a good job by not over trading this month, and I kind of was prepared for that, knowing this would happen. But I really, as you can see last week, I really let it go, which we'll talk about. But I I was prepared for it, but it seemed that it was still wasn't enough. So for example, if we go up here, last month or last year, I should say, and last year in July, I just killed it with my best month ever at the time of 16,000. We then come into August, and I only make 1,200. So again, still green. I've been green every month for the past like 3 years now or so. But on the month I struggle, I mean, I really struggle to stay green. And so that's a big hit, right? To make 16,000 one month and then struggle all month long to only make 1,200. That was sucks. So I knew that was a hit that I took that year. In 2018, I think it was November. Yeah, November here. So, October come out with a decent month of 5K at the time. That was a really good month for me. And then all month long, I struggled to make back this loss of 3,000. So I ended up getting green. I came back green, but only 800 bucks, So I've always prepared, any time between like August and November, I've expected a rougher month. And so I was kind of preparing myself for that. And so when I was having a slower month and my P&L was lower, I was accepting of it, right? I wasn't disappointed. It was okay. Because I expected it. But then I kind of, and I'll go over this in the video, I kind of got ahead of myself, which I'll go over, and it really led to me kind of blowing it and giving back, pretty much half my month in 3 days, the last 3 days of the month. So anyway, like usual, we'll go through best and worst trades. A lot of trades just didn't really go anywhere, didn't do much, but a few were very good and had a lot of lessons. So we'll go through those. First one here is JCPenney. If you know this, obviously everyone knows JCPenney. This company is bankrupt. They are going bankrupt, but there's constantly maybe news or rumors about them selling their assets, selling their buildings, keeping their real estate to keep their value, etc. All these different strategies they're trying to do to try to stay alive and or just get something out of their bankruptcy. And so we run from 20 cents up to 80 cents in 2 days. So that was a huge play for me. But this is where when you, at least personally for me, when I review my trades, the P&L becomes secondary, right? It doesn't matter if I made a lot of money or if I lost a lot of money. It comes down to how well did I trade under the circumstances I was given, and what cannot control. So JCPenney, this trade here that I took was my biggest winner on the month. The 14 or the 2,400 right here, this was from JCPenney. Now it's great that I made that much, but what happened was very difficult for me to accept because I couldn't control it. And so I'll just get right into what happened. It was a great short, right? So a short play, we start parabolic out the open, and I have my trades here. Let's make JCPenney bigger. So execution wise, great. I mean, nailed the top, covered a little bit here, down a little bit more there, reshorted on the red green move because I knew people would sell when it's red. So these trades together made 2,400. But the problem was what happened in real time was I usually use my broker Cobra to short. Cobra during these weeks had difficulty finding an OTC route that worked. For whatever reason, the routes that they used to route my OTC orders kind of canceled on them. They no longer took their routes. They no longer did business with them, whatever the case was. And they didn't really let me know. And so, amongst the middle of this action going on, I have to find out like mid play as this thing is spiking that I can't short it at Cobra. And so now I'm like frantically, trying to figure out how I'm gonna short it. And luckily, I have a speed trader account that I had up, realized that they had a route for me to short, so I quickly moved over to them. So this trade was at Speed Trader. The issue was, and what I couldn't control, was the fact that I had way less buying power at Speed Trader than I did at Cobra. Right? If I was able to take it at Cobra, I would have taken maybe almost 3 times the size that I took, and this would have been a huge win. I mean, this would have been maybe even a 5-figure win instead of 2,400. Again, I'm not complaining. Great. It's still, in terms of execute, I'm very happy with this trade, but it's just one of those things where a broker issue came up and I had to switch brokers, and the broker I switched to just did not have as much. I didn't have enough capital, right? At the end of the day, I could blame myself for not having enough capital in my Speed Trader account. So that was a huge issue. Executed well, but again, factors I can't control kind of really hindered my performance, or I guess my P&L at the end of the day on this one. And then second one was Basa as well. If you look at the daily chart, this is the same day. Again, beautiful 3 green days. I'm looking for the first red day, which we got. And same thing happened. This is the same morning that JCPenney happened. So I actually didn't even find out that JCPenney wouldn't take my order. I actually found out Basa wouldn't take my order at Cobra, which then led me to find out I couldn't take my order at JCPenney. Because what happened was, we're going red at around 96 cents, 97 cents, and I'm trying to short right in this, and I can't. Right, and this is when my orders were being rejected. I realized I couldn't short. I couldn't get a route to fill me at Cobra, so I had to switch to Speed Trader. By the time I got that figured all out, I couldn't now short until like the 90s. So instead of it getting a great average of near $1 with a much bigger size, I ended up taking about a quarter to half of the size, much lower, like 10 cents lower. And I have the trades here too. We go to Basa. You can see here, this is where I shorted at Speed Trader. I would have loved to get short here with double the size, but I didn't. I just, again, factors I couldn't control. Had to work with what I had, and caught a small piece of the fade, but actually ended up going much lower. This is no fault of my own. I just wasn't patient enough. But again, just another thing where I made $1,000 on this trade, but with double the size and a 10 cents higher average, I mean, I should have made $3,000 or $4,000. It's just something you have to think about. Again, it's not something I'm going to beat myself up for. It was an unfortunate scenario, but it's something. It's just a good lesson, because it's like, if it happened to me, it's certainly happening to someone else. So it's super important to like know your broker, know what issues they're having at any given moment. Make sure routes that you want to use are working every single day. Just stuff like that. And I dropped the ball, and it is what it is. So I had to move on from there. Next was NWBO. NWBO has been a solid runner that we've been watching the last month or so, and I didn't play it too much here, but this move I got interested. This move on the breakout over 80, I think this is one of my best long trades of the month. Let's go here. So if you know how I like to trade breakouts, I typically really dislike buying the breakout at the breakout level. Sometimes I will do it if I think the breakout is good enough, but most times I end up getting crushed doing that. So I really do my best to wait for the breakout to hold, most for like 2 or 3 hours, and then look to buy. And so that's what I do with NWBO. It broke over the 79.80 level-ish, right about here in the day. And so I didn't even start longing until like 83, 82, well into power hour, because I wanted to prove itself, right? If it kept running without me, then I would have missed it. I'm totally okay with that. I'd much rather have it proved to me to be working and then get long before getting long at the breakout level. And yes, sometimes I will miss ones that go right up right away. But from my personal experience, I have taken too many unnecessary and unwanted losses from buying the breakout right away and then having no follow through, and taking a loss. And it actually happened on LKNCY today. So this is October 1st. If you go to LKNCY chart, like that happened today. It was a breakout I bought, and I had to sell for a loss because I didn't wait for it to prove itself. So anyway, back to NWBO. I did long in these dips in the 83, 84 level. I think I started adding as it made a new high today over 87, and then I sold into the low 90s here. As I sold, I typically did sell because I got cold feet into holding overnight. But as I was selling, I immediately realized I probably should be holding overnight, right? Just the strategy and what the setup calls for is that majority of the time they're going to gap up for a better sell. And so when I did finally sell, I made like $900, which I was super happy about. But I just had a feeling, I was like, man, you probably should be long some overnight. And what do you know? It gaps up another 5 cents. Could have sold right into there, but at the same time, I couldn't guarantee I'd get filled. Maybe If I did have it overnight, I would have not gotten filled till it went red green because it did fail right out the open. So who knows? But it's just a good lesson. When a breakout closes strong over its breakout level, majority of the times it will lead to a gap up, and you probably should have some long overnight. Now, this could be dated; it could change over time, but currently that's how usually OTCs work. That's what the odds say, and what usually happens. So that's something I should have done there. Now, I ended up trying to short NWBO on this day as well, and I have the trades. Let's see here. There we go. And I just butchered this. I really butchered it. As you can see, I covered both tops. I shorted right on red green. Didn't panic nearly as much as I wanted, but it was okay. I'm trying to stay patient. When it comes back green, like way stronger than I expected, like the way the level two looked and the time in sales, I was like, yeah, Kyle, you need to get out. It was dumb. They trapped me right. I covered right into the top, reshorted again, thinking, okay, if they trap me the first time, I should probably be safe, and I set my risk a little higher, more towards, I believe. Yeah, maybe I didn't. Maybe I made a mistake of yeah, and that's actually, now looking at the chart, this would be the biggest mistake, is that I set my risk level on this previous high. Now, that could work in some cases, but the best thing would have been to risk the all time highs, which would be 96, 97. And I didn't do that. And so when you look at the trades here, we try to chop around. We failed to keep going back red, and we come back green, and then we break that previous high. And so I cover, and they get me again. Right, I cover right into the top again. Um, so between these two losses, I ended up resulting in, I believe, $1,400. So like 700 here, 700 there. And I didn't reshort. I just kind of threw in the towel. I was like, man, uh, for whatever reason, I am not focused. I'm not making good trade plans. I'm not, really letting this stock work. I'm letting them play games with me, and they're tricking me and catching me off guard. And so I didn't short. Now, if you look at it, it would have taken you multiple days of swinging for it to really play out. So just in general, when even looking at the daily chart here, the stock just did not, it didn't have a red day like I typically want red days to happen. And it did it here. I know I should have expected a similar type thing to happen, because it didn't do it last time, right? Last time it took 5 days for it to fade, 10 to 20 cents. Same thing here. So that was my kind of mistake as well, not acknowledging what happened just a few days prior and thinking something different would happen. I mean, and it could happen, something different could happen, but to not acknowledge what just happened to potentially happen again, that's a huge mistake on my part. So that also sucked, and that's ultimately why it led to $1,400 in losses. Next one would be Peck. So Peck was a nice low float runner that happened with a lot of like SPI, Sun W, and unfortunately, the reason why I'm not really going over those plays is because majority of the days there were no borrows, and if there were borrows, they were super expensive, and so it was quite frustrating for me to miss out on those. Uh, and you know, finally, Peck did have borrows on this particular backside day, so I was very happy. I was like, great, I'm going to be able to, take advantage of at least one of these things, one of these runners. And so, I feel like we have the trades here. Let's go. Let's get out of NWBO. Peck here. Yep. Here we go. So I did get short pre-market, um, and then I added a little bit at the open. This entry is way bigger than this ad because we were lower. I didn't want to double my size or more because the entry was too low. I would have liked it to spike a little higher, but it didn't. So I'm just going to accept that for what it is. But as you can see here, we just start fading, and I do have really good covers. I'm actually quite happy with these covers down here. Did I know it was the bottom? No. I kind of thought it would keep going lower, and it did later in the day. But I just felt that we were down at this point, I think 15 or 20%, and all the other ones were bouncing too. Like all the other sympathy plays that were with Peck were bouncing as well. So I just said, you know what, it's best I just take it off and lock in these gains. And I made $1,500 on this trade. And I actually was watching this bounce, but I kind of had cold feet. I put an entry like right around 720 near the top, but I just was too late, and it was already forming its first red candle there. So I did miss that. Would have been nice to swing that to the, or not swing, but ride it back down to sub 6 and maybe even new low days if I was patient enough. But not a big deal. It is what it is. We keep moving. And this is when things get bad. At this point we're now at towards the later end here. Again, like a lot of these trades that you see a lot of green here, like this was where JCPenney was, but all these other trades here, they just weren't eventful. Like they just either kind of, again, we're in summer trading or slow trading. So none of these trades were really good lessons. And I'm trying to go over the best ones. And that really unfortunately came when these losses started hitting. So we go into Tuesday Q, TUESQ, bankruptcy play, huge runner from 35 cents up to 150 over like 8 green days in a row. And this thing just clobbered me. This thing absolutely threw me around like a rag doll, and partly because I chose to ignore the liquidity. Um, I would prefer a much more liquid stock than this stock was, but for whatever reason, I felt the need to want to be there for when this had a red day, and I kept kind of coming back for more, even though it just wasn't never it was never that ideal. Like it needed much more volume for me to be trying to be aggressive as I was on this ticker, and so that's a good lesson in summertime trading, right? To I understand I naturally want to be more aggressive on better plays, but when the better plays, quote unquote, in a slow market aren't even that great, I have to just chill out. And so this was the first day I traded or Tuesday. Um, I actually nailed this panic, which is really cool. This is the best probably play I had on this ticker. Unfortunately, I got like again quarter the size I wanted. Covered had a good covers here in the 80 cents level. And then it bounced. And I'm like, okay, I'll get to reshort this bounce. As I'm getting short of this bounce, I quickly realize how illiquid it is. I'm like, okay, this sucks, but I'll just wait for it to fade how it usually should, and I'll just take another smaller gain. Of course, it doesn't do that, and it breaks over this bounce, and so I cut it, giving pretty much almost all my gains back. I end up making like $300 on the day on this ticker instead of over like a grand or so, and that was that. I ignored it this day because after squeezing back, after going red and then coming back, I'm like, okay, the next day probably should be pretty strong. I don't really want to touch it. And then this day is when I get screwed. This day, I now treat it like an overextended gap down, and I believe I have the trades on this one. Let's go to PEC. Yeah, Tuesday Q. So you can see here, this intraday is this chart right here. I start shorting out the open. I luckily cover a little bit here and lock some gains in, but not much. I mean, it was barely anything. Start shorting the highs. Think we're breaking down, so I short a little bit more, and we then hold. We start kind of supporting, and I'm thinking, okay, this might just have one attempt towards red green. If it fails, it'll be perfect because then that's a huge sign that it wants to stay red, and then we'll potentially make moves back to the lows. And we do. So we spike green, and I get a really good ad here, and it fails. So I feel really good. Spike again. I'm like, okay, am I going to cut it here? Fails again. I'm like, great. Goes another time, the third time in a row now, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm almost positive I have to cut it here. So I almost cut it, and it failed a third time. So I'm thinking, after 3 fails in a row, trying to go green, I'm like, this is great. Like eventually, it's gonna die here. After so many attempts of it failing, at some point, the longs are gonna give up. And this thing was resilient. This thing was impressive. Came back again, tested a fourth time, and then we consolidate a little more, and then finally the fifth time's the charm. I saw this volume coming in, and so I was luckily able to cover right before it officially did go green. Um, but yeah, just super frustrating. I ended up losing 1,500 there, so pretty much giving back my pet gain, netting out those two trades. Um, and at this point, after giving most of my gains back from this day, and then giving it back again on this day, I'm just pretty upset with myself at this ticker in general. But I just keep coming back for more. It's just like I fortunately, maybe it was being the slow market, maybe it's my whatever's going on in my life. I mean, nothing drastic is going on, but for whatever reason, I felt the need to like keep coming back and keep fighting, and it just you gotta learn to when to let go, and I just couldn't do that on this ticker for whatever reason, and so I attempted to try to reshort it on this day as well. Um, and finally, this is when it actually had a green day. If we go to the daily chart, this is when it had this day right here, finally an official red day. So I swung overnight. And then in the morning, we had that morning spike the next day. Right here, it started squeezing out like here. And so I just thought to myself, like, man, this thing just had a red day and it's already trying to have another green day. Like, this thing is just so resilient for being a bankruptcy company. Clearly, and finally, this is when I finally hit my breaking point. I was like, I got to let go. Like, I got to give up. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm waving the white flag. And I covered here, lost another like $700. Um, and yeah, we did go lower. We do keep fading, but even again after today, we actually closed green. Um, so I'm probably going to blacklist this ticker, meaning I will probably never trade it again unless it wants to show something super obvious or have way better volume. Uh, Clearly, I just can't trade this well, nor does it really trade normally. It's kind of like NWBO, where tickers that I think would move a certain way and maybe pull back a certain way definitely didn't. And so tickers like this, I kind of just have to avoid. Even though the setup is there, the execution of the setup that ends up how it ends up playing out just definitely isn't there, and so I have to accept that. Now, the worst trade of the month comes from GTXMQ. This is another bankruptcy ticker. Beautiful. I think they announced their bankruptcy here. Finally went to the OTC market, I believe, somewhere in mid-September. And so now we have 3 or 4 beautiful green days from 150 over $3. So again, I'm looking for that backside. And as a bankruptcy company, it typically should pull back harder than your average company. That wasn't the case for Tuesday Q, but I expected this to be the case for GTXMQ. And coming into today was what? Today's Thursday. So yesterday on a Wednesday, we were gapping down. The close was 283 or 285, I believe, and we're gapping down like 285 by like 283, and we open, and I give it a few seconds, and there's like no buying, no one's hitting the ask, and so I thought, okay, my risk is incredibly small here. If I want to get short right here on the red move, let me try to push some size because it is a good, beautiful 3 green day run, and it should pull back pretty hard because it's a bigger company. Let me try to get some size and get a good entry right here. Have a very small cent risk. Have only a few cent risk. And so I short 20,000 shares, which is quite a big position for me. And we pull very small here down to 7 or 270. The problem was when I was shorting, after I was done filling, like there was no more sellers. It was like I was the only one selling. And so quickly I realized that you see this volume coming in, and right away we're back now green. And the sellers that I saw on the 285 level that I thought I could cover into if it was going to go back green, like they vanished, like they were gone. Like everyone knew to go long but me. So all these sellers vanished. And the next thing I know, there's like massive slippage. I can't get any fills. Uh, anyone who's buying is I'm fighting to get fills from them. There's very little sellers. And so the next thing I know, I have to cover like the majority of my size into like 299, like $3, finally where there's some sellers. Um, so that sucked. I mean, that literally made me take up to like 10 to 13 cents of slippage. That's not what I want. That pretty much doubled or if not tripled my loss. So that ended up resulting in this biggest loss of the month of $3,300, um, which sucks. But uh, I'll go over this topic at the end of this video. But in terms of just taking bigger size, it is something I want to start working on. But it just wasn't this again. This isn't the play to do it, right? This wasn't the play with the liquidity, with everything that how I've been trading, how this month's been going in general, in terms of just momentum and how clearly I'm seeing the market and how well I'm trading. This just wasn't the time to do it, and so it just bit me right in the ass, and I got into a stock like this that just didn't have the liquidity to get out when we squeezed, and so I took massive slippage, and it is what it is. It sucks, but it happened. Now, luckily, into the first day of October, I was able to nail this first red day really well, so I'm happy about that. I did take smaller size to finally just calm down and take smaller size. I think it's here. So yeah, 'cause you see here, here's the day where I shorted out the open, and immediately it perks up to $3. So I just have to cut it there. And imagine if I didn't cut it. Imagine if I just got stubborn and held. I would have been down well over 5 figures if I just let this thing run against me all the way to 370. So that's why you always cut it. And after I took a loss on GTXMQ, Seal here is another ticker I tried shorting, and as you can see that didn't work immediately. I shorted red on the red move, came right back green. I said screw it, I'm gonna get out. Um, Ended up fading even lower. So again, not a good trade plan. Should have been risking up to 115. Didn't do that, and so that resulted in another loss. So that's why you see this day here of 5 grand. I think this is my worst day or second to worst day. I know. Actually, it like ties my worst day. This was the day before, back in June before CYDY happened, or one of the few days before CYDY happened, which resulted in a massive day. I'll link this June recap in the description below if you want to check that out. I talk about that loss and those gains on CYDY. But anyway, yeah, so I pretty much tie my worst day here, worst week so far ever. Um, and normally in the past, I would feel pretty bad about it. I would feel pretty like disappointed in myself, and somewhat I am. But I think from being here before, right, having had a new worst week before, it's only natural that I'm gonna get used to the new worst week. If that makes sense, right? To think that as you grow as a trader and as you get bigger and better, to think that you wouldn't have a new best week on the profit side and not have a new worse week on the loss side, right? To think you that wouldn't happen is just you're not thinking in the big picture, not thinking how trading works, right? So naturally, as I want to get bigger, as my account gets bigger, which it has been, like the last few months, I've had massive gains, bigger than I've in my career. So to have my account much bigger and to taking bigger size and bigger risks, that comes with this, right? This is an outcome, right, that I have to accept. So in terms of those, I'm very accepting of it, which is great because it allows me to move on. And coming into today on GTXMQ, I have the executions here. I did pretty well. I'm really happy with this. I gapped down quite quickly, or it panicked quite quickly, so I couldn't get a lot of size. Luckily, I waited for a bounce to actually get short. Added a little more here, just went green, and I made a good trade plan. This is how I actually learned from a lesson. I said I'm going to risk the all-time high of like 350, 355, where it perked out of the open, and it actually worked. It worked out great that I made that decision because we barely go green, and then we fail, and then we fail again, and I get to cover near $3. I had like a $3 average, and I locked in close to $2,300. So great start to the first day of October. I think after going over this video and reviewing my trades before this video, like I've learned my lessons. I know what I need to do to improve next month. And like I said, one of the key lessons is how I expected this month to be a little bit slower, so I thought I was prepared. And I thought I would be smart by even preparing even more by saying by sizing up, right? Like I said, or like I mentioned, all those previous months that I had in the previous years where I had to really struggle, and I had to like work it out and grind through it. The following months after those ended up being some of the best months ever, right? Or ended up not the best months ever, but ended up bringing my trading to the new level that allowed me to bring in much bigger gains. And so, as this slower month was happening, as I was struggling to kind of really make as much bigger gains as I could, right around this area, like this week is when I kind of made that realization. I was like, this type of trading is going to make me a better trader. Why don't I size up now and like beat myself to it? Like, why don't I've already like prepared for the tough month. Well, why don't I kind of like speed it up for the next when the better months come? And it's like trying to, make um, a lady pregnant in 1 month by making 9 ladies pregnant, right? You have to let time go along. You have to let time pass. And so I have to wait for, the October, November, maybe even December to pass before the next year comes around and I can really take my trading to the next level I want to take it to. And so trying to take it on the perfect example of shorting, GTXMQ here with a big size just wasn't warranted, right? I don't need to be taking that size right now, right? The market is not there. The liquidity on some of these setups isn't there, as I mentioned. And so even though it's a setup, I have to recognize in a slow market how ideal is it, right? Yes, it's a setup of mine, but just because it's the best setup that I have currently right now, how does that compare to the overall spectrum of all setups I've traded? And that should be something I account for, and I just didn't do that on Tuesday Q and on GATXMQ. So hopefully that lesson got across. I know that was pretty long winded, but it is what it is. Like I said, I'm green, which is great. I could be much worse. I could be red on the month. But going into October now, we're gonna keep moving forward, right? I'm gonna keep on following risk management. I'm gonna size down a little bit, make sure I don't take losses that just can blow me out of the water with slippage. And until the market heats up again, that's when I will then look to start increasing my risk, start trading with the account size that I think I should be trading with. Um, and taking risks, I should say, that are equivalent to my account size. Because right now I'm trading pretty much most of my career. I've been trading very small to what my account size is, and I've been trying to increase that. And right now is not the time to do that. So that much pretty much is, guys. Leave any questions or comments down below, and I will see you guys next time. Later.